So here's my pitch for Spider-Man First Hunt. Peter looks down at his hands, at this new suit, and he feels the power rush through him. Felicia Hardy, the Black Cat. Peter Parker is not perfect. You can call me Tombstone, Mr. Parker. Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot. Oh, fuck. I'm a firm believer in the trilogy. 3 acts, beginning, middle, and end. There's a certain structure to it that I really love. And so, in what is probably my most requested video ever, I want to focus on making my Spider-Man trilogy while still fitting within the world that we've set up. If you haven't seen part 1, feel free to check that out, but that recap should be everything you need to know. With this pitch, the main goal is once the MCU establishes the black suit for Spider-Man, how can that story be told in a fresh and interesting way? We left off with Peter in a good place, but he's still hurting from the trauma and the pain of losing his loved ones. All of that combined with the symbiote gives us the potential to build the foundation of a proper trilogy. So here's my pitch for Spider-Man's Second Sting. I'm not 100% on that title. I don't like making titles. Don't hold me to that title. Comment down below what you would title the movie, because I need the engagement. We open on the image of a spider crawling on the ground as a boot suddenly comes down to crush it. That's what we in the biz call subtle imagery. The camera pans up to reveal a man stepping out of Rikers Island prison. Mac Gargan takes a deep breath of warm summer air and smiles, having served his sentence a free man. I've said this many times before, but boy, they just forgot about Scorpion, didn't they? They really set up this character in 2017, had him be the after credit scene of Homecoming, cast Michael f***ing Mando, and then just forgot about him. Mac Gargan is a fantastic character that hasn't had the representation that I think he really deserves, and so a lot of more casual fans aren't as familiar with him. And I think that this story is the perfect opportunity to bring him back. How can we tell the story of his origin in the world that's been set up so far, especially now that Peter has the black suit? A car pulls up as Gargan leaves the prison. Gargan steps in and is greeted by a man, L. Thompson Lincoln, otherwise known as Tombstone. Tombstone says that he heard about what happened to Gargan, what Spider-Man did to him. Gargan grins, saying the first thing he's gonna do is figure out who he is and gut him like a fish. But Lincoln stops him. He says he knows who Spider-Man is, he's known for months, and if Gargan really wants to make him pay, just killing him will be too easy. But he knows how to really make him suffer. From here we get the really long Marvel logo. Since we're doing the black suit, it might be fun to put a little symbiote flare in there, I don't know, just like some goop. The intro cuts to black, and the camera slowly pulls out to reveal Spider-Man's mask, with Peter looking at it through a microscope. The door opens, and Peter throws the mask back on before turning to see Dr. Reed Richards holding a chart of test results. Alright, so in the first video, I made an intentional choice to not feature any other characters of the surrounding MCU. I have nothing against the interconnected nature of these movies, but I've always felt like the Home trilogy focused a little bit too much on the guest characters, centering a lot of Peter's arcs and motivations around them. I wanted to reaffirm that Spider-Man's characters in his world are special enough without whatever bearded father figure of the week we have this time. I'm assuming whenever this 5th movie comes out, we'll have met Mr. Fantastic. Or I guess this universe's Mr. Fantastic. And he and Spider-Man will have interacted at least once in some kind of crossover or something. These crossovers can let us see Peter in the black suit more often and spend more time with it than we'd be able to otherwise. Peter thanks Reed for running the test for him, and Reed says he's happy to do it. In fact, it's a fascinating specimen. Peter's shocked. What he'd initially thought was nanotech is actually an alien life form, its genetic makeup unlike anything in the entire universe. It was recovered in Mexico before being taken to Miles Warren's lab, where it escaped and attached itself to Peter's suit. Peter remembers what the other Spider-Man said, about fighting an alien made of black goop. This couldn't be the same alien. Could it? Reed says that the alien has the characteristics of a symbiote. It gives the wearer enhanced strength, senses, and other abilities, but it feeds off aggression and hatred and could possibly be altering its personality. Reed doesn't know for sure, but he asks if Peter's noticed anything along those lines, and Peter's eyes begin to drift away. I don't know why I just said that. That's totally inappropriate. I'm so sorry. I'm MJ. We flash back to Rand Robertson's New Year's Eve party. Peter looks at MJ Watson, the first girl he ever truly loved. She doesn't recognize him, but he can't help but feel a swell of emotions. Felicia Hardy sees Peter's behavior and is put off. Do you know each other? Peter's barely able to manage out a few words. I'm Peter. From the coffee shop? What? Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. I used to see a lot of people there. Somebody clears their throat from out in the hallway. Oh god, I'm sorry. This is my boyfriend. A young man enters the room and shakes Peter's hand. Nice to meet you. I'm Harry. Harry Osborn. I'll talk about it later, don't worry. As Harry goes to greet Rand, Flash, and the others, Peter's whole world goes dark. That name. Osborn. It can't be. We cut to Peter later that night as he stops a mugging. Rain pours down on him, dripping off the black fabric of the alien costume. Seeing MJ like that, happy with somebody else, having no idea who he even was, it caught him off guard and he wasn't ready for that. But more importantly, it was that name. Osborn. It echoed through his mind. Norman Osborn killed May. destroyed his life. Peter's never hated anyone as much as he hated Norman. He knows this Harry has nothing to do with Goblin. He didn't think that Norman Osborn even existed in this universe until now. But still, that pain, that anger, he couldn't help but feel that for Harry. That's why he likes this new suit. We see him take down the muggers more aggressively than we're used to. He can't help it. With the suit, he's stronger, he moves faster, hits harder, he feels good. It lets him take out his anger more easily. Felicia sees Peter and the way he's acting. The two of them have been going on patrol together, like real partners, and she's never seen him like this. So aggressive. And she asks him what's going on. Peter doesn't tell Felicia about MJ, he figures it's too confusing and it would just push her away, but he does tell her about Norman, about the way he ruined Peter's life by forcing him to use Strange's spell, and how meeting Harry brings all that back to the surface. Felicia can see how much Peter is hurting, and she tries to comfort him. She puts her hand on his shoulder, but Peter pulls back. I'm fine. No, Spider, you're not. And that's, I said I'm fine. We cut back to Peter in the Baxter building. Peter snaps out of his daydream. No, not that I can think of. So with it being a black suit storyline, this movie is really the opportunity to explore some of the darker aspects of Peter's character. Most of his appearances have kept things light for the most part, but his actions at the end of No Way Home showed us that there's some real anger and darkness in him. I hinted at it in the previous part, but now I think it's time to be addressed. Peter's been living a life of trauma and pain. He's always held his head high and never let it burden him, but when does it become too much? What's that breaking point? And how serious can a YouTube video about Spider-Man be before people eventually click off? We cut to the Daily Bugle as Peter's late for work. During his summer break from school, he's still working as the IT guy for them, and we can explore that environment and what it's like to work there. I don't know if Betty working there is like canon or if it was just like a thing for TikTok, but maybe Peter tries to talk to her and she's all like, I don't even know who you are. That, on top of how Jameson treats him, Peter basically hates working there. Both Far From Home and No Way Home made a choice with how it handled the Daily Bugle and J. Jonah Jameson. A choice which honestly I was never a huge fan of. Over the past few years, I've noticed this really weird trend in turning the Bugle and Jameson into a parody of Alex Jones and other alt-right conspiracy podcasts, which in my opinion is incredibly insulting to the character of J. Jonah Jameson. I do understand the idea though, print newspapers are dead, podcasts are king, and Jonah is very much the kind of person who would stand in front of a green screen and make stupid videos about Spider-Man for the internet. But I do think that the character is bigger than just that, and that can be explored throughout this trilogy. Jameson calls everyone into his office for a big announcement. The Daily Bugle Company has just been bought by a generous backer, someone who can give JJ the resources and the manpower to turn the Bugle into the next big powerhouse of free speech and journalism. Hey, wait a second. And that man is L. Thompson Lincoln. Peter's heart drops. Lincoln puts on a warm smile, gives a speech, putting on this persona of a soft, kind-hearted billionaire, but Peter knows who he really is. We cut to Lincoln's office later that night, in a high-rise above New York City, as he talks to Matt Gargan. Gargan's experience as a weapons dealer is making it so he's not used to following orders, especially from people he barely knows, but Tombstone holds the idea of Spider-Man's identity over Gargan's head, using Gargan's need for revenge as motivation to stay in line. After Gargan leaves the room, Tombstone turns to see Spider-Man, at his door once again. Peter confronts Tombstone about buying the Bugle. Tombstone says he needed a way to keep tabs on Spider-Man, and plus, public image is a powerful weapon. Something big is coming, he can feel it. A turf war to shake up all the organized crime in New York, and having the press on his side will be useful in keeping Lincoln as the kingpin of crime. I capitalized kingpin in my script, I think that might be a typo. Tombstone threatens Peter with his identity, saying that if Peter doesn't fall in line, he'll tell the whole world that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. After what happened in No Way Home and all the damage that revealing his identity caused, this scares Peter, and he throws a punch at Tombstone. As Peter fights Lincoln, he notices something. Tombstone is taking the punches harder than he did their last meeting. Is it the suit? Peter knows it's made him stronger lately, but by that much? But something isn't right. Peter lands one final punch, knocking Tombstone to the ground. As Spider-Man stands over him, he notices something. Lincoln's demeanor has completely changed. On the verge of tears, Tombstone puts his hand out, begging for mercy. From the hardened criminal mastermind to a victim? That's when it hits him. He was too focused on the fight, he didn't notice his spider sense going off. Peter looks behind him to see J. Jonah Jameson standing in the doorway to Lincoln's office. Jonah, enraged, demands to know what's going on here. Tombstone says that Spider-Man barged into his office, started demanding money, and then attacked him. So Peter is framed for the assault of famous philanthropist L. Thompson Lincoln. Jonah runs the story using pictures from security cameras to completely destroy Spider-Man's reputation. This, on top of the Mysterio controversy, plus him publicly teaming up with the notorious cat burglar, leads to essentially the entirety of New York turning on Spider-Man and not trusting him anymore. He swings through the city, seeing billboards branding him as a criminal. He can't escape it. It feels like the only person who still believes in him is, ironically, Flash Thompson. One of the things that I feel like No Way Home failed to deliver on was the story of Spider-Man dealing with public backlash. He was immediately absolved of Mysterio's accusations accusations, and the
court of public opinion
was more so just the court of one wacky gym teacher. It felt like the Mysterio controversy was mostly just a way to tell some jokes and create a little conflict for college admissions. By the second half, Mysterio is basically irrelevant. So I think that this movie could be an interesting opportunity to try something similar, only now with the weight of the black suit to see how Peter behaves differently. Throughout all of this, we start to see Peter grow more and more attached to the symbiote. The Venom movies handle their symbiotes in a different way than we used to with Spider-Man, basing it more in Venom's solo comics, which are more goofy and comedic, which is something I really enjoy about these movies. But obviously that wouldn't really work for this movie and what we want to see in a black suit story. So we're not going to do the silly Tom Hardy voice in his head. You can explain the differences being that it bonds to Peter differently because of his radioactive spider blood, or maybe because it was such a small piece, or I don't know, like some multiverse shit. Who cares, really? As the world turns against him, instead of turning to others for help or to his friends, he turns to the suit and forms this attachment to the way it makes him feel. Not just the power, but the companionship. Like it's the only thing in the entire universe that truly understands him. He's able to take it off at will, it's not permanently bonded to him or anything, but he hates the way he feels without it. While he's wearing it, everything just feels right. We also see the ways that Tombstone is using his position as owner of the Daily Bugle. He starts whispering in Jameson's ear, spreading rumors and misinformation, manipulating him and his fear of Spider-Man to do what he needs. I mentioned how Jameson has been treated as an Alex Jones type character lately. It's good for a joke, but it almost always leads to him losing a lot of his more relatable and human aspects. Even the game pushes it a little bit sometimes. Jonah isn't just a crazy guy with a mustache yelling about Spider-Man, that's me. He's at his best when he provides meaningful conflict by holding Peter accountable and not kissing his ass just because he wears tights. His mistrust of a lone, masked vigilante is somewhat understandable, especially in stories where that mistrust comes from personal tragedy. And I think there's real potential to explore that and have him grow from how he was in No Way Home. Tombstone manages to convince Jameson that Spider-Man is too dangerous. If he came after him, he can go after Jonah and Jonah's family. Somebody has to stop him. And so Tombstone introduces JJ to Mac Gargan. He tells Jonah that Gargan showed tremendous growth during his time in prison after he was brutally attacked by Spider-Man, scarring his face. He's since fully rehabilitated and he's now volunteering as the first test subject in Lincoln's new project. Wait, hang on, not that one. Tombstone wants to create a new police officer that can fend off criminals better than any vigilante to make Spider-Man obsolete. And so Gargan is subjected to experimentations, merging his DNA with that of a scorpion, the natural enemy of the spider. He's granted superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, and a set of armor is bonded to his skin along with a bladed cybernetic tail. And the scorpion is born. Throughout the second act, we see that Peter and Felicia have been spending time with MJ and Harry. The two of them reached out to Peter after the party, and having made not the greatest first impression, he wanted to try and fix that. He also wanted to get to know Harry a little bit more and keep an eye on him, both for his sake and for MJ's. Harry seems like a decent guy. I think it'd be fun if he's this sort of softer, kind of stoner guy as opposed to the rich prick that we're used to seeing, especially if they get someone like Timothée Chalamet to play him.
My genre of dream is sports star, swish.
Harry's father died when he was young, and he inherited a startup robotics and genetics company, Oscorp. They're relocating to New York from Boston, and Harry even offered Peter a job, but Peter still doesn't trust Harry. Not just because of what Norman did, but also because he's growing more and more selfish about MJ. In these scenes, we start to see something between MJ and Peter. It goes unsaid, but MJ's starting to show a glimmer of interest in him. In the moments that they have alone, she tells him that she feels like she's known him for years. I think it'd be really interesting to discuss the limits of Doctor Strange's spell. Memories are one thing to erase, but what about feelings? Is it enough to forget the time you've spent with someone if the emotions and the love you feel for them remains? That's from the Batman Fortnite comic. Think about that for a second. The time that Peter spends with MJ leads to him not spending as much time with Felicia. It's not like Peter doesn't care about Felicia, he really does, but he just can't help his feelings for MJ. And this absence is something that Felicia's become very aware of. You see, throughout the movie, Felicia's been dedicating her time to figuring out more about this turf war that Tombstone's preparing for. She follows him, interrogates people, listens in on conversations. Basically, she does all the cool spy stuff that Sony wanted to do with that Black Cat solo movie that's probably not happening anymore. On an unrelated note, El Muerto is going to be the best movie of all time, just you wait. Peter will sometimes help her with the investigation, but overall he's absent when she needs him. No matter how hard she works, how much she does, there's always one piece of the puzzle missing. What could be so big that Tombstone would need to do all of this to prepare for? And what does the Scorpion guy have anything to do with it? As Peter's forced to avoid any more bad press as Spider-Man, we see that Scorpion has been playing hero, saving people from burning buildings, stopping bank robberies, saving cats out of trees, all while stopping and smiling for the cameras. He even gives himself a fucking catchphrase. To the press, it really seems like the Scorpion is the hero that Spider-Man never was. But in the wise words of Alex Russo from the hit Disney Channel show Wizards of Waverly Place, everything is not what it seems. Oh, I hope I don't get copyright claim for that. While Scorpion's been putting on the show in the more well-off areas of New York, he's become a menace to the people in lower income and disenfranchised neighborhoods. He roams the streets looking for trouble, harassing people who aren't doing anything wrong, making threats, taking bribes, and serving as the muscle for Tombstone's operation.
Hey, wait a second.
While Peter and Felicia are out on patrol, they catch Scorpion as he's holding up a mom and pop liquor store. They step in to put a stop to it, and Gargan and Peter exchange some words. Threats. The words are threats. Gargan resents Spider-Man for what he did. Not just for putting him in jail, but he blames him for throwing him off the ferry and scarring his face. He says if anyone else pulled that shit, they'd get charged with assault and branded a criminal for the rest of their life. But put on a pair of tights and cover your face, and you're a superhero. That's why he likes being the Scorpion. He can smile, put on a pretty face, and nobody will bat an eye when he finds out who Spider-Man is and kills all his friends. He hasn't figured it out yet, but it's only a matter of time. Throughout the scene, Felicia's doing her best to keep Peter from starting a fight. It's not worth it, and their reputation is already bad as it is, but this threat scares Peter, and he ends up throwing the first punch. Peter's caught off guard by how strong Scorpion is, and both he and Felicia get pinned under his tail. As news vans approach, Gargan's commended for stopping Spider-Man from robbing the store, and in all the commotion, Peter and Felicia are able to escape. So Harry started to take notice of how Peter's been acting around him, and he decides to talk to Peter about it. He's not aggressive or antagonistic or anything. He's actually remarkably calm and mature about the situation. He's not sure if it has anything to do with MJ or whatever, but he just wants to reach out and see if he did something wrong, or if there's anything he can do to be a better friend. But Peter doesn't take it this way. Instead, he reacts in fear and in anger. He still doesn't trust Harry. He thinks he's trying to lower his guard. He's lying. He just wants MJ for himself. He wants your power. He wants to hurt you. All of this fear and this anger clouds Peter's mind. Everything feels like it's coming at him all at once, and he can't tell the difference between his spider sense and his anxieties. Harry puts his hand on Peter's shoulder to try and calm him down, but Peter sees this as an attack and lashes out. Not knowing his own strength, Peter pushes at him. Harry falls down a set of stairs and slams his head on the ground. Harry ends up getting rushed to the hospital, and Peter's forced to think about what he's done. Felicia ends up calling Peter to meet with her. She heard about what he did to Harry, and she's done defending him. After all this time of ignoring the things that matter, keeping things from her, hurting Harry like that was just the nail in the coffin. It's over. She knows that he thinks the world is out to get him, that everything's been taken from him, and he's right. He's had a harder life than anyone can possibly imagine, and she's tried to be there for him, but he just keeps pushing her away. Outside of patrol, they've barely spent any time alone in months, and when they do, his mind is somewhere else. Felicia says that she knows what Reed said about the suit, how it might be affecting his personality. She knows that this isn't who he is, and he needs to take it off before anyone else gets hurt. Peter confesses to her the truth about MJ, about their history, about his feelings for her. He thought that this honesty would help explain what's been going on, that she would understand. But it just makes things worse. Felicia is stunned. She slowly stands up, and through a broken voice, she says, "I thought you were better than this," before walking away and leaving Peter all alone. Eventually, Jameson finds out the truth about Tombstone, about who he is and what he's really using the Daily Bugle for, and even worse, about the monster that he's created in Scorpion. There are certainly comic stories where Jonah's just straight up evil, might as well be a supervillain, but those are stories that I think the character has evolved past over the years. I love Jonah when at the end of the day, he's a good guy who can be a bit of an asshole, but cares about others and is loyal when it counts. Basically just how Chip Zdarsky writes him. And so I think that after his actions in No Way Home, where he sent his followers to chase down a literal child leading to the death of his metaphorical mother, it's a pretty tough act to just turn around and say, actually, he's not such a bad guy. But I think there's a potential story in showing a man who's manipulated by misinformation and people in power to do things that he thinks is right. But in reality, he's hurting a lot of people. And he eventually learns that to own up to his mistakes. In an attempt to right his wrongs, JJ barges into Tombstone's office and threatens to expose him to the public. But Tombstone warns against that, as Scorpion steps in from behind and puts the knife end of his tail to Jonah's throat. The two of them have a good deal going here. All Jameson has to do is keep his head down, his mouth shut, and nobody's gonna get hurt. But Tombstone can't make any promises if he's not able to do that. Tombstone lets Jonah walk out of his office unharmed. Jonah thinks about what to do. He thinks about his family, his son. He can't put another loved one in danger again. Not after what happened. But deep down, he knows he has to do the right thing. Peter sits alone. Is Felicia right? Is this the person he's becoming? Maybe she and Reed have a point. Maybe he needs to get rid of the suit. No. It's them who's wrong. The world's taken everything from him. His family, his life, his reputation. This one thing is his, and it makes his life worth living. Peter needs this suit. The power. It makes him whole. It's made him the person he's always needed to be. That's when Peter hears a voice. Dude, what the hell is going on with you? Peter turns to see the person he least expected to see. Flash Thompson. Flash is one of my favorites out of all of Spider-Man's supporting characters. When we first meet him, he's a cliched high school jock who shoves Peter into lockers, but over time, he's changed and matured and become one of Peter's best friends in the comics. The Home trilogy kind of failed to deliver with this character, basically wasting an actor like Tony Revolori, but now we have the opportunity to do something interesting with him and show that kind of growth. Flash talks to Peter, giving him the reality check that he needed. He says that, hang on, I'm sorry, I can't do this. This is a serious moment. I need to change this popsicle stick. He says that he doesn't really know Peter, but he knows where he's coming from. Throughout all of high school, Flash felt small and unloved, and so he would lash out and target people who he thought he could make feel even smaller. He had his reasons, but still that doesn't make it right. Flash saw Spider-Man, this guy who was doing everything he could to help the little guy, who would hold himself accountable for everything he did, and he realized he needed to do the same. He had to take a good hard look in the mirror at the person he was and make that change himself and work to be better. Peter is silent. He hates to admit it, but Flash has a point. Something isn't right. Spider-Man's been hurting people, choosing violence as a first resort to deal with Tombstone or Scorpion. Every fight, every problem in his life has been caused by him and his decisions. This isn't him. It's the suit. It has to be. Reed said it could be changing his personality, and Peter didn't want to listen to him. He would never do these things in the old costume. It's the only explanation, the answer for everything wrong in his life. So Peter removes the symbiote and returns it to Reed Richards. It's not this grand triumph of ripping off the suit in a clock tower. We've seen that done plenty of times before in some of the best versions of Spider-Man media. Instead, it's Peter taking an introspective look at himself and his mistakes and making a decision to fix everything and become the kind of person that he knows he can be. Tombstone sits in his office when a newspaper lands on his desk. An expose written by J. Jonah Jameson himself, titled The Lies of L. Thompson Lincoln. Okay, listen, I know this Beagle doesn't do newspapers, but I tried to make it like a BuzzFeed article and I couldn't take it seriously. I'm sorry. It's all in there. The truth about Tombstone, Scorpion, everything. Even his connections to Kraven and the Miles Warren experiments. Tombstone throws the paper off his desk. Not only is his entire plan up in flames, but turns out the man is actually a decent reporter when he wants to be. He looks to Scorpion and tells him what he needs to do. How bloody do you want it? I don't micromanage. Scorpion smiles, and before he leaves, Tombstone calls out to him. In case you run as a Spider-Man, you might get a kick out of this. Peter goes to the hospital in an attempt to apologize to Harry. While he's there, he runs into MJ, and she says that they're not letting in visitors for another few hours. She says that Harry's not in great shape. He hit his head pretty hard and is in a lot of pain. But despite all of this, Harry doesn't blame Peter for what happened. He knows it was an accident, and he can tell that Peter's been going through some personal issues, and it was all a misunderstanding. Peter's even more ashamed. He realizes now that Harry is a genuinely good guy, and if MJ is going to be with anybody, Harry Osborn is probably the best person she could be with. Peter promises to MJ that he's doing better. He's cut out the toxic things in his life and made the decision to be a better man, and he says that he's going to change. The two of them get to talking about their feelings and about each other. I know I haven't really done much with MJ in this video. It's hard to showcase a character in a pitch like this when they don't serve like a plot purpose, but this can be a moment where we get to really see how much MJ has grown in between movies. After high school is a time where you really find yourself, and I think that her character could be a really fun way to represent that. She doesn't need to be like the party girl that we know Mary Jane is from the comics, but if they made her more confident and sure of herself and showed that growth, that'd be really nice to see. Against her better judgment, MJ asked Peter if he would wait with her before they go see Harry. Peter can't help but smile. Yeah. I like that a lot. MJ has to step away to take a call. As she's gone, Peter sees the news on the TV down the hall. The Scorpion is attacking the Daily Bugle. Nobody knows what's happening or why he's doing it, but he's terrorizing the building in search of J. Jonah Jameson. Peter hesitates. He can't let down MJ, not after everything that's happened and the promises he just made. Plus, Jonah's the reason that his life got ruined in the first place. Things might be better off without him. But Peter sighs. Still, he knows what he has to do. We cut to the Daily Bugle as Scorpion is tearing the place apart trying to find Jonah. Jameson hides in the closet as the monster he created wreaks havoc upon his workers. Scorpion calls out, threatening that if JJ doesn't come forward, he'll kill every single person in the building until he finds him. And Jameson, not wanting to see anyone else get hurt, complies and faces his worst mistake. Gargan grabs a hold of Jonah and throws him out the window. Jonah screams before being thrown back up into the building, and Spider-Man jumps in through the window, wearing his red and blue suit once again. Scorpion and Spider-Man fight as Peter tells Jonah to get everyone out of the building. Once Jonah helps the last person out, he looks at Spider-Man, the man he once called a menace, putting his life on the line to save him and everyone around him. And finally, he understands the kind of person Spider-Man really is. The two of them fight throughout the Bugle, smashing each other through walls, floors, ceilings, destroying everything in their path. Peter manages to get the upper hand and webs Scorpion to the wall. As Peter begins to walk away, Scorpion calls out, "You and I both know I'm not staying in jail for long. Isn't that right, Peter?" Peter freezes as he slowly turns his head back in horror. Gargan begins to laugh. "That's right. I know who you are." Peter's world collapses in on itself. No, not again. Peter slowly approaches Gargan. "I'm going to tell the whole world that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, his identity. He can't let it happen again. Not after everything he's lost, everything it cost him. You keep your mouth." Scorpion catches Peter off guard, using his tail to break free from the restraints and knock Peter to his feet. Scorpion pins Peter to the ground by the throat. He removes Spider-Man's mask and begins to laugh. He leans in close to Peter. "Let me tell you, the second I'm out of here, I'm going to kill every single person you love. All of your friends, your family, that little girlfriend of yours. I'm going to personally cut their throats and watch the life leave their eyes while they know it's your fault." Peter screams out and is able to break Gargan's hold. The punch smashes Scorpion's helmet, revealing his face. Peter shoots out a web and pulls a broken pipe from the damaged wall. He slams the pipe into Gargan. Again and again, sending him to the ground. Gargan cowers in fear, but Peter doesn't fall for it. Peter cries out in anger, and with every last ounce of his strength, he slams the pipe into Gargan's jaw. Peter steps back, horrified at what he's done. as he hears sirens in the distance. We all want to believe our heroes are perfect. That's kind of the appeal of the Black Suit storyline, right? It gives us a darker, angrier Spider-Man who pushes things a little too far to be edgy and tell that story and sell more comics. But at the end of the day, is usually able to take the suit off and shed himself of all responsibility. After all, he's being controlled by an alien symbiote made out of black goop. But if you ask me, that's too easy of an answer. That's not how real accountability works. What if all these thoughts and these feelings and these actions are Peter's to begin with? Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Black Suit. I absolutely adore it. It's a fantastic story that really pushed the character beyond what we thought he was capable of. But the symbiote is at its best when, at its core, Spider-Man still has to hold himself accountable for the things he did while wearing it. It doesn't flat out control him or change his entire personality, but it just points him in the right direction, whispering to him, bringing the ideas that Peter already had to the surface, just giving him more of a reason to do the things that he does. And I've noticed in a lot of symbiote media, that accountability has been kind of pushed to the wayside. It's not Peter who did these things, it's the suit's fault. But the truth is, Peter Parker is not a perfect person. For as much as we want him to be the shining beacon of hope and purity, that's just not always what he's gonna be. Sometimes he falls, sometimes he makes mistakes. No Way Home showed something about this character that's kind of being ignored. This Spider-Man has a real anger in his heart. Was it justified? Hell yeah. Norman killed May and was going to collapse the entire multiverse. But to me, I find it so interesting just how angry we see him get. There are very clearly some deeper issues and deeper potential for violence that we hadn't seen up until now. Toby stopping him from killing Norman is a great and powerful moment, but in the context of a bigger story, how can we be sure that Peter learned the right lesson from that? Sometimes it takes time to learn a lesson. Sometimes it takes a mistake to truly grow. And the best way to show that visually is by revealing that the symbiote is not the source of all the mistakes in Peter's life. He is. And he has to accept that responsibility. Peter holds his suit in his hands. Gargan is in the hospital, alive, but with severe brain damage and internal bleeding, he could be in a coma for the rest of his life. Peter looks at this suit, these colors, this symbol. It's supposed to stand for something. Something greater. Something that Peter can't be. We hear a voice. "Oh, honey. What's wrong?" Peter looks to see May Parker. He's sitting in his childhood home. Everything is calm here. Everything is safe. May, I'm so sorry. I thought it was a suit. I thought taking it off would fix things. But I'm just so angry. May puts her arms around her nephew. Baby, there's nothing to be sorry about. Everything is okay. It's not your fault. Am I a bad person? Oh, sweetheart. Of course you're not. It's all okay. I'm so proud of you. We both are. Tears start to well in Peter's eyes, and his voice starts to break. I'm not the person that I thought I was. He closes his eyes and begins to sob into her. I'm so sorry, May. We get a montage showing the people in Peter's life, the people that he's failed. Felicia stands on a rooftop. MJ sits in her apartment alone, Harry in the hospital bed. Jonah stands in what remains of his office after Scorpion's attack, after the monster that he created. A box sits in the center of the room. I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. Jonah opens the box to see Spider-Man's costume. I can't do this. Now, I recognize that this is a lot. This is a YouTube video about Spider-Man, and I think it's definitely pushing the limits of how serious I can get with these pitches. It's part of the reason it took me so long to make, because of the weight of this story, and it's much darker than I usually like when it comes to this character. But like I said before, the focus of this video was to set up what would be my Spider-Man trilogy. And an integral part of the perfect trilogy, in my opinion, is that the second movie ends with what I call the Empire ending. The first movie should stand on its own, the second movie build off of that and leave our heroes at their lowest, and the third movie should be the triumphant return and the conclusion of the story. It's a basic 3-act structure that's bigger than just one movie and necessary for a longer, cohesive story. You might think that Peter hurting Scorpion like that while wearing the classic red and blue is too dark, and I don't disagree with that. I've honestly gone back and forth on it a few times while making this, but I think it's an integral visual to represent both to the audience and to Peter the mistake that he's making in that moment. Peter's made a lot of mistakes in the comics without wearing the black suit. He's killed people, hurt his loved ones, all while wearing the classic red and blue suit, and we've all forgiven him for it, because he's a fictional character and because we know his intentions are true, but those mistakes still haunt him and their motivation to always improve himself and be better. And to me, that capability of growth is the true sign of a genuinely good person. If the last trilogy was about being a high schooler, this trilogy is all about that period in your life when you transition from being a kid to being an adult. Speaking from my own experience, once you graduate high school and once you turn 18, things seriously change. Your entire life you have this safety net that your family will help you out, or at the very least that legally as a child you'll be judged less harshly. But once that's gone, and once you're out in the big world and forced to fend for yourself, that's a really scary place to be at in life. Especially if you don't have have anyone to help you through it. Your flaws are your own, and you have to own up to that. Regardless of the reasoning or what got you to that moment, you have to own up to your mistakes. That's what being an adult is all about. That's the real meaning of responsibility. Alright, fuck, this is such a downer ending. I feel really bad. If only there was a way to have a little scene to tease what's going to happen in the next one. So anyway, here's the credits. We see Felicia Hardy standing on the rooftop above New York, waiting for someone. A voice calls out from behind her. Is he coming? Felicia looks to see Matt Murdock, Daredevil, standing behind her holding a file. He's done. Quit. Oh, that's a shame. I get it, I've been there. But there's a war coming. Daredevil hands Felicia the file. She opens it up to see a photograph of Wilson Fisk, alive and well. He's back, and we're gonna need all the help we can get. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. If you like this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Special thanks to Alto the Sting, Cassidy Bond, Cole Soup, Iron Ninja, Jonah, Corey's Not Fresh, Lime Spice XL, Logan Triplet Films, Ryder Harrison, The Artsy Fartsy Guy, Tim Neufeld, Tyler Goodrich, Yobi Perkins, Zachary Stonebreaker, Zero to Hero 148, and ZZ Tosi for being spectacular fanboys on my Patreon. This has been TroyBoy17 coming at you live. Trans rights, be responsible, and I'll see you around.